All right, welcome to your briefing. We're about to give you the inside track on the next Northern Beaches Council meeting, but we're going to skip the noise and get right to what really matters in the agenda. Okay, let's dive in.
So today, we're zeroing in on Section 8 of the agenda. First up, we'll talk about what I call the Council's engine room. Then, we'll look at how they're trying to streamline the rules, we'll check the numbers on financial health, see how they recruit a crucial watchdog, and then we'll wrap it all up with the big takeaway. So, the scene is set for the upcoming council meeting on February 17th. And while all the big, flashy projects might grab the headlines, the real work of governing, the stuff that makes everything else possible, well, that often happens in the sections of the agenda that look the most, boring.
So I want you to imagine something. You're the counselor. This massive document lands on your desk. Where do you even start? The big debates are important, for sure, but understanding the machinery that makes the council actually run, that's just as critical. And that's exactly where we're headed. We are jumping straight to Section 8. Now, you got to think of the Corporate Services Division as the council's engine room. Seriously, it's not always glamorous, and it's definitely not always in the spotlight, but without it, the whole ship doesn't move an inch. So what exactly goes on in this so-called engine room? Let's pop the hood and take a closer look at the machinery that keeps this entire council running. In a nutshell, this division is kind of like the council's central nervous system. It handles the money, it tracks how well things are going, it manages risk, and it oversees all the internal rules. Its whole reason for being is to make sure the entire organization runs like a well-oiled and totally transparent machine.
Okay, let's get into our first specific item. Now, item 8.1 might look a little strange. They're talking about getting rid of a policy, but it's actually about some smart administrative housekeeping. Okay, so here's the story on this. On the one hand, you've got this standalone communications policy from way back in 2019. The proposed change to just get rid of it. Now, why would they do that? It's not because communication isn't important. It's because all the key stuff in it is already covered by other laws or just part of how they operate every day. It's a great example of how good governance sometimes means cleaning out the old stuff. So, what's the goal here? It's all about efficiency. It's about tidying up the internal rulebook, removing policies that are just taking up space. This has nothing to do with reducing transparency. It's all about reducing duplication. Simple as that. All right, next up, we get to see the council's report card. This section is like a dashboard, giving you a quick snapshot of the council's financial health and how well it's actually performing. And you're not just looking at one thing. Nope, you're reviewing minutes from the Audit Committee, the big quarterly performance review, and not one, but two different monthly investment reports. This is what accountability looks like, folks, the real nitty-gritty, showing exactly where the money is and if the council is hitting its goals. And when you actually dig into these documents, you find some really cool details. For example, here's a quote from the CEO's report. The voice of the customer survey results were at an all-time high. Now, that's not just a pat on the back. That's a key piece of data that suggests the council's services are really connecting with people. It's the kind of thing that's going to influence decisions down the road. Okay, now for a topic that's a bit more of a human story, recruiting the watchdog. Item 8.6 is all about this thing called the Audit, Risk, and Improvement Committee, or ARIC, and making sure it stays independent and full of experts. So, what exactly is ARIC? Honestly, the best way to think of them is like an impartial referee. It's a committee of independent experts, and their whole job is to keep a close eye on the council's finances, how it handles risk, and just its overall governance. They're there to provide objective advice and make sure everything is above board. So this agenda item is actually what kicks off the process to replace the chairperson, because their term is coming to an end. This slide breaks down exactly how that works. It starts now with a call for anyone interested to apply. Then a review panel made up of the CEO, the current chair, and one counselor assesses everybody. Finally, that panel recommends the best person for the job, and the full council gives the final approval. It's a very structured, transparent process, which is exactly what you want for such a critical role. So, okay, we've walked through cleaning up policies, digging into financial reports, and even a recruitment process. Let's pull it all together and talk about why these seemingly dry administrative details actually matter a lot. Everything in Section 8 really boils down to three core principles of good governance. First, you've got efficiency. That's all about making the rules clearer. Second, accountability. That's the constant checking of all those financial and performance reports. And third, oversight, which is that whole careful process of putting an independent watchdog in place.
And really, that's your briefing. It just goes to show you that good governance isn't always about the huge headline-grabbing projects. It's about the steady, diligent work of making sure the engine room is humming along, that the rules make sense, and that someone is always, always watching the numbers. It's about getting these little details right. So the question for you is, do you agree?